Whenever you go on a podcast and you know you're going to be recording for like 2 hours and it's like a smart person podcast where the goal is to say smart person things, you're always going to come out of that with a couple of regrets. You know, you're gonna walk out of the room and you're gonna be staring at the ceiling that night and you'll be like, I can't believe that I answered that question that way. I had a way better way of talking about that, and I let somebody down by not mentioning their work or something like that. But I watched my Alex O'Connor interview. I listened to the entire 2-hour thing, and I think I did okay. Now, ultimately, the parts where I was weakest were all parts where I should have been weak. You know, I'm not a philosopher, so I think that those conversations were fun, but you know, they were more like, let's look at how Hank sees the world rather than let's interrogate this and see if you're right or wrong or whatever. But, you know, I'm a functionalist, I think is what they call it, where I think all of the thoughts inside of the brain exist inside of the brain rather than consciousness being some fundamental part of the universe. But when I watched it back, I realized there was a moment that's extremely embarrassing for me. Nobody thinks it's embarrassing. Nobody has said, oh my God, Hank, that was so embarrassing. But when I watch it, I'm like, oh my God, that is so embarrassing. Because, well, okay, roll the clip.
Okay, just as a footnote here, at the moment, is there something that there is like a wacky, like wild, no consensus thing that you really just wish we could figure out, like something kind of specific?
Oh, I don't know.
That you just like, I want us to work out if that is how that happens.
Nothing's coming to mind immediately.
Nothing's coming to mind, Hank? Nothing is coming to mind. So I know what happened here. When you get a question like this, you just draw a blank. I don't know. There's like a certain kind of question in an interview. Come up with a thing from scratch. You almost certainly had to have had this answer ready to go. Like you knew it beforehand. Like if you just asked me to tell you a fact, I could do that because I have them ready because people ask me to give them facts. But on a normal day, if somebody said, Hank, give me a good science fact, I'd be like, bloop. Like, if you asked me to give you like a good dad joke, I know a billion good dad jokes, but if I don't have one pre-prepared to be the dad joke I tell, I just draw a complete blank. Out of the hundreds of dad jokes that I have performed or read, I cannot come up with one on my own. And in the same way, when Alex asked me, hey, what are some things that we do not have consensus on now, but we will have consensus on them in the future? And there are so many good ones. This is such a good question. But I came up with nothing. I drew it in a complete blank. And so I would like to make up for that. I would like to give you some things that currently we do not have scientific consensus on. There's arguments, but I think that these debates may be settled by the time I die. So conditions here. I'm not talking about things that we don't have any information about right now. Like as an example, whether life exists outside of our solar system would be a good example of, like, we haven't started to establish a debate about that yet, really. We are just starting to establish the debate. You are around for the beginning of the establishment of the debate. That's what's happening right now. Like there was that detection of K218b. Was that what the exoplanet was? Where there was like a potential biosignature, but then other people have come up and been like, no, that biosignature wasn't a thing. Like the path to getting to consensus on finding extrasolar biology is going to be long, and we are not at a point where there's like an active debate even yet. You know, there's a little bit of debate. There's like some people being like, what about this? And it's like, no, that's not enough. Not even close. And it's really not. Like we are not at a place where we have enough information for us to be close. But we are starting to get to the place where we might have good enough tools to maybe do it. We just have to use those tools much more and maybe also better tools in the future. What we're talking about are things that we already know quite a lot about, but we still have not gotten to a consensus. Like the debate is active, and I think that it may get settled over the next 40 years. And we're going to go through this starting with the most practically important things. And we're going to end with the most like, I just think this is really cool, and this isn't going to have like an impact on anybody's life, but if we got there, this would be amazing and like scientifically all on its own very cool. So as an example, we're going to start with Alzheimer's. Why does Alzheimer's disease happen? What kicks it off? What are the different things that are interplaying here? So we know that there are these misfolded proteins, and we know that they can cause other proteins to join them in being misfolded. And this is part of it. For a while, we thought that that was the thing that kicked it off, that just like a protein misfolded, but maybe it's different from that. It seems like there's a lot of things going on. Some brains are able to clear these aggregates, some are not. How does lifestyle fit into this? Diet. How does metabolism fit into this? How much does this have to do with insulin and glucose sensitivity? It seems to be quite a lot because GLP-1s have been surprisingly and excitingly very effective, which what? Implications of figuring this out, enormous. I do think we will get there. We're a lot closer than we were 10 years ago. Similarly, why are there more autoimmune diseases now than there used to be? We are having more. We don't understand why. We have a lot of hypotheses. Some of them you've heard of, like the hygiene hypothesis, have been mostly disproven at this point. I mean, not that it has no impact, but the idea that like, oh, kids are cleaner now, and so that's why they get more autoimmune diseases, probably not most of it. Probably if it has an effect, it's a small effect. And it could be so many different things. There's so, like, I've got my private theories, which I don't even want to say out loud because it is really just like, this is the vibe I get. And when you have an opinion based on a vibe, that's not a good opinion. That's a fine thing to have, but not something you want to be shouting as a person who people take seriously, even though you're not an expert on a topic. But there are ideas. It's complicated, and there's tens of millions of people with these diseases, including myself. Understanding initiation could inform prevention, could also inform treatment. This would be very good. So it's a very big deal, and I think that we could get to the bottom of it, though I have a suspicion that getting to the bottom of it won't look like, aha, it was the microplastics. It's going to look like, oh, for this condition, it's most likely to be this. For these, it's likely to be this. With peanut allergies, we already figured this out, that peanut allergies were increasing a lot because we were getting afraid of peanut allergies. And we were saying, don't give kids peanuts. But when they were exposed to peanuts later in life, that actually increased the chances that they would develop a peanut allergy. They should be getting peanuts earlier, which we have now revised. And now there's fewer peanut allergies. But that's like one thing. So I think that it's going to end up being a number of different things. It might be different for lupus than it is for ulcerative colitis, than it is for wheat allergy. So just be aware. And yes, I do think that a wheat allergy is an autoimmune disease. I think that all severe anaphylactic potential allergies are diseases. People don't agree with me on this, it seems, all the time. But I think that they are diseases and they are autoimmune diseases. Anyway, next one. High temperature superconductivity. We find that it happens, but we cannot predict when it is going to happen. So we create materials and we're like, maybe this one's going to be a superconductor. And then it isn't. And then it is. And we don't know why. So that's one. And if we got good at predicting superconductors, when we say high temperature, we don't mean that they're hot, but like, not at absolute zero, then that could be very useful in all kinds of applications where you would want to use a superconductor. All right, very specific to my areas of interest and also still quite debated, what is going to happen to the AMOC? Hopefully we will not reach consensus when this very important ocean current shuts down and tremendously impacts the climate of everywhere, but specifically anywhere that is, in the northern Atlantic countries that touch the northern Atlantic Ocean. How much is it slowing? How severe is that? When is it going to shut down? We're going to get closer to understanding that. This is still a thing that is very debated. And there's papers that come out in both directions all the time. All right, moving on to things that I think are less important. We can start out with Alex's interest. And will we find a sort of neurobiological basis for consciousness? I think that we've done some work there. There is plenty of debate, though. There's the idea that it's like in the crosslinks. It's not in a place. It's like created. It emerges from information being transferred around. That's very weird. There's also ideas that it could be in a place. We know that it's a place because there are people who don't have it. There are people who experience sensations without the sensation. So they're like, I feel the hotness, but I'm not feeling, like I feel the pain, but I don't feel the pain. Like I know that that's pain, but like it doesn't bother me. We see all of these little ways. Now, Alex in particular might disagree with me about the fact that we know that consciousness is a thing that happens in the mind, but I'm not a philosopher, so he should have that debate with somebody else who is a philosopher who knows about this stuff. What are dreams for? What is sleep for? We have a little bit more consensus around what sleep is for. I don't know that we have consensus around what dreams are for, or if they have a purpose at all, or if they're just like a thing that happens to happen when you're doing the thing that sleep needs to be doing. I think that there's still a lot of debate about what's going on in sleep. Sleep is very strange. Of course it is, because it happens in the brain, and the brain is very strange. But I think that in the course of my life, there will be many facets of sleep that will be more settled. And I think that dreams may be one of them, that we may have sort of a better understanding of why dreams happen. If they serve a purpose, what purpose is that? All right, now let's talk about some that are absolutely just no impact on your life, but would be very, very cool. We're going to end with the one that I'm most excited about, that I do think there's a very good chance we get to in my lifetime. But first, dark matter, dark energy. There are so many different ideas about what those things are, and these people have their camps and they fight over it, and that's the fight that's going on right now. And I think it's totally possible that in my lifetime, there will be a champion that will be so good at explaining what we see, and we will be able to actually do tests in the world. We could even maybe detect dark matter particles if that's what it ends up being. Now, I'm not that confident in this because we've been looking for a while now. We've been using a lot of really clever ideas to try and find dark matter, but I don't know, maybe. There's also, I think, really strong potential for the current dark energy paradigm. Physicists are all over the place with this stuff. But the one that you and I understand is okay, there has to be extra energy to make the universe inflate, so that's coming from somewhere. Maybe that's different. Maybe that's something else. It's not energy, it's something else. I don't know. But I think that there's totally, 40 years is a long time for people to be concentrating on those problems. I think we could get there. Next, while I think that it's likely that life outside of our solar system we will not have total consensus on that over the next 40 years. Maybe. Dr. Kipping, Cool Worlds, you got my number. I don't know if you do. You could get in touch with me. But I do think that it's possible that the path to consensus for life inside of our solar system might be short once we have access to physical material, whether we're on Mars or we bring some of Mars back or we send things to some of the Jupiter moons to see if there's anything interesting going on there. I think that there's some universes where the path to that consensus is actually pretty quick. We just need a little bit of information, and then everybody's going to look at it and be like, well, really hard to explain that any other way besides life. But I don't know. I think that that's more likely than finding it outside of the solar system, just because, there are way more potential objects to hold life outside of the solar system, of course, but we have way more tools to examine our own solar system. So it is possible that we will not reach that consensus because there isn't life in our solar system, and it's going to be much harder to prove that there isn't life than to prove that there is life. Maybe impossible to prove that there has never been life on Mars. But if there was once plentiful life on Mars, and if we can see it very easily, and if it's fossilized, and if we can do the tests on it, then that's not hard at all. That actually might be a pretty short path. And that leads me to the last thing, the number one thing that I think has been an open question in science with a great deal of debate over the course of my life and far beyond it, has been, how did life begin on Earth? And I actually think that we kind of under the radar, people have been doing really good research on this over the last 20 and 30 years. And I think it is possible that over the next 40 years, we might start to get to the bottom of that chemically, how a self-replicating system begins, and then how it moves from just being sort of self-replicating molecular loop into something that exists inside of a cell membrane and is also able to pass along its strategies for survival to a next generation that would then be able to evolve. I think that's kind of an underreported on part of science right now. At least people aren't all that interested in it. Interestingly, most of science is focused on stuff that's going to have practical implications. We think more about Alzheimer's than we do about the origin of life. I understand that. I think that's the right way to do it. But there are people working on this. They've got a lot of really interesting ideas. Those ideas are probably right. And if they are right, then they can do things with those ideas to test and see if they actually happened on Earth. And I'm excited about that. I'd love to talk to some of those people on Hank's channel at some point. That's going to be a lot easier. It's hard, but a lot easier than where did the universe come from? Figuring out how life began is a solvable problem in a way that figuring out how the universe began, what actually caused the universe to begin, is kind of a not solvable problem. Or maybe it is, I don't know. But I don't think that we're going to get there in the next 40 years, whereas there are lots of ideas and lots of discussion and many differing opinions on how life began on Earth. And I think that we may have a pretty good idea, and there may be consensus around that 40 years from now. And I'd be interested to see how this goes in 40 years. I'm confident that we'll have Alzheimer's kind of nailed down. I bet we'll have autoimmune diseases nailed down. I don't know about dark energy or dark matter or the beginning of life on Earth, but we'll see. I think that it is totally possible. We're going to keep moving forward unless we don't. What I can say for sure, it's going to be interesting.